Hi, this is Christina with the Sisyphean Journal, and it's time for another rant from my kitchen. And this one's for you, Stephen Crowder. Um, it's November 22nd, 2020, and I'm going to link below. Stephen Crowder posted a video called The Uncomfortable Truth About Abortion. And Stephen, usually you are so spot on that it's amazing. But this is something where I think you and so many other pro lifers are really, really, really missing the point. And that's because you're buying into the abortion lobby's lie that abortion is something that women typically freely choose. And I am just going to start with my own story to show how this works. Now, I was pro life by inclination, knew that it was a baby, but when I got pregnant for the second time, I was married. I had a small child. We were dirt poor. I had already sold my wedding ring to buy food for my daughter. I was skipping meals. We were broke. We were living hand to mouth and not eating a whole lot at that. And then I found out that I was pregnant. And that's when all the propaganda I got when I was in college started to kick in about how we need to have abortion so that poor women who already have other children they're responsible for can direct their resources toward those born children. And I had been only one sex ed class did this to me, just one. I did not grow up in a pro choice household. I was not surrounded by pro choice people. This was just enough propaganda from one biology of sex class in college that I had been taught that my responsibility to my daughter, if I loved her, I would take on the agonizing moral and spiritual and emotional burden of killing the baby inside me because it was the only way I would have enough resources to take care of her. You can't imagine what that felt like. Now, if I had had a pro choice friend, just one pro choice friend, that friend would have patted my hand and said to me, yes, it's hard. I know you don't want to do it, but you're already skipping meals, so the baby's not going to be able to be born healthy because you can't eat enough to keep this baby healthy and feed your daughter. You have to do the responsible thing. You have to bite the bullet. You have to take this horrific, agonizing burden on yourself and make that spiritual, emotional, and moral sacrifice and live with this for the rest of your life for the sake of your daughter. So, had I had a pro choice friend and made that phone call and gone to Planned Parenthood, that would not, for me, have been the easy way out. It would have been absolutely horrible. But just one pro-choice friend telling me, yes, Dr. Zavadny in college was right. The pro-choice movement is right. This is something that you need to do. And if you love your daughter, you will do this no matter how painful it is for you. Now, I was fortunate that our best friend was my husband's friend from basic training. He was a Roman Catholic of Mexican extraction. And in his world, you helped each other. And my husband and I were so paralyzed by our college education, we really couldn't see a way out. I could not bring myself to pick up the phone and make that appointment. And I felt so guilty that I was not willing to fulfill my responsibilities toward my daughter. And I felt the way that you, Stephen, as a man might feel if somebody was trying to harm your wife and you couldn't bring yourself to pull the trigger to shoot that person who was trying to rape your wife because you didn't want to live with knowing that you'd killed somebody. Okay? That was one college course managed to indoctrinate me to that point. Now, fortunately, Eddie knew that our problem was where we lived. We had this expensive apartment out in the middle of nowhere. We had a gas guzzler car. My husband had nobody to commute with, so I was stuck. I was having to shop at mini marts. Eddie was like, you need to find another apartment. We're like, there are no other apartments. It took me forever to find this one. Eddie was like, no, we're going to find one. And he practically had to physically drag us out to the car in order to get us to go out and look for another apartment. We found another apartment and it fixed the problems. My husband was able to carpool. So, man, our gas expenses went down to almost nothing. We were across the street from a grocery store. I could just walk across the street and buy food at reasonable prices. And then Eddie, like I said, came from a Mexican family in Fresno, put me on the phone with his mother. I invested a little bit in a long distance call. Back at the time, you couldn't just call anywhere on your cell phone. And he had to translate because his mother's English was kind of shaky. But I got some of her recipes for how to make red beans and rice and flour and cornmeal and lard go a long, long way. And till we were done getting help from Eddie, we were not only able to feed ourselves, but we could afford to have guests over for dinner. That was the difference, having a pro-life friend who was looking for what really was best for me versus a pro-choice friend who bought into all the crap. You cannot begin to understand the pressure that gets put on women. And the abortion lobby, when Coca-Cola ads come on TV, they are not expecting you to go out right this minute and buy a Coke. They want to establish in your mind that when you are thirsty, Coca-Cola is your beverage of choice, and then you keep a stock of Coca-Cola so that whenever you're thirsty, Coca-Cola is on hand. That's that long-range advertising. And all the propaganda we see the abortion rights movement put out, including the poor women need abortions, blah, 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 that is all designed to plant in women's heads, just like that sex ed class planted in my head, that no matter how much you don't want to do it, abortion is the responsible thing to do, and you need to just bite the bullet and go through with it. And I'm going to give you another example. And I bet if you got hold of Debbie Cardamone, I can help you get her contact information. She can talk to you. You can have her as a guest on the show. Her daughter, Marla, died as a result of an unwanted abortion. Now, Marla was, I think, 18 years old. She was living at home with her mom, her dad, and her 1-year-old son. And Marla's father was quadriplegic. He had been left injured from a gymnastics accident when he was much, much younger. And Marla was helping her mother take care of him. So this was something where there was a responsibility that could be played on. And that's exactly what happened. Marla became pregnant as a result of date rape. Marla was taking antidepressants. A social worker at Magee Women's Hospital, and if you interviewed Deborah, she's not going to be allowed to say that it was Magee Women's Hospital because they had an out-of-court settlement. I can say it. The rat bastard who killed Marla wrote a medical journal article about it. So Marla didn't want an abortion. This social worker told her that because of the antidepressant she was taking, that her baby would be born with serious disabilities. And she said to Marla, you already have your son to take care of. You already have your father to take care of. You will not be able to help your mother at all with your present responsibilities and this baby. You will be letting your mother down. You will be letting your father down. You will be letting your son down. You need to buckle down and do what's right for the people you love. You need to do the right thing for your mother, for your father, and for your son. And Marla said that she would make an adoption plan then so that she could have her baby and still be able to fulfill her responsibilities to her mother, her father, and her son. And the social worker told her, no, that a baby with disabilities like this, nobody would adopt that baby. And if she didn't raise the baby herself, the baby would be put in an institution and abused all its life. Can you see the emotional manipulation that was being used? Now, the only manipulation I was subject to was one college biology of sex course. One professor over a period of 12 weeks pounding into me how abortion was the responsible thing to do. This was a 2-week period. This social worker even called Marla at home to nag her about this. Marla asked for an ultrasound to verify whether there was really anything wrong with the baby. This social worker didn't even arrange an OBGYN consult for her. She sent her for the ultrasound and did not give her the results. She just kept hounding and hounding and hounding. If you love your mother, if you love your father, if you love your son, you will bite the bullet and you will do this and you will carry that burden as an act of love for them. And Deborah told me, this is her exact words, that the last 2 weeks of her life, all she did was cry. So Marla was bullied into this abortion. It was botched. She died a horrific death. And only after her death, her family sued. They got the records. They found out that the ultrasound had showed no abnormalities, and the autopsy showed that there had been nothing wrong with Marla's baby. She was bullied into an unwanted abortion that killed her along with her baby, and this was something she did not want to do, but she was browbeaten into being told that it was the only responsible thing to do if she loved her mother, her father, and her son, and that it was the only way to spare her child being mistreated all its life in an institution. And I have a friend, Anita, who got pregnant in high school, and she went to get some options counseling at an abortion clinic. Now, what kind of options counseling do you think they gave her? They told her about how she would wind up dropping out of school. She'd be living in poverty. If her baby was a boy, he'd probably wind up in a gang and getting killed in a street fight. If her baby was a girl, her baby would probably end up being a drug addict and a prostitute, and that it just was not a responsible thing for her at the age of 16 to be raising a baby. And she said, well, then I can make an adoption plan. And this was about 5 years later. Anita was describing it to me. She said, they showed me a video and I had known how adoption agencies are just fronts to get children to give them to child pornographers who then rape them to death. That's the education about adoption that they gave her. So Anita was feeling like, what in the world can I do? I don't want to kill my baby. I don't want to doom my baby to a horrible life. I don't want to give my baby to child pornographers who are going to abuse it. And she finally went to her mother and said, what would you do? And her mother said, well, if abortion had been legal, I would have aborted you and your sister. And Anita said that kind of clinched it for her. Her mother threw her out. She went to court, emancipated her. But fortunately, Anita was not a pushover. She went into GED classes. She got her GED before her class even graduated. She met and married a wonderful man. They had another child together. And even people who knew that Brandy wasn't Dieter's biological child would forget, because he was such a wonderful father to her. But look at the pressure that they put on her to try to get her to abort. That they use the normal psychology of stress. And you already know stress puts you into fight or flight mode. Rationality goes right out the window. You start looking for an escape. And they're told, here's an escape. You can get out of this situation and it will be like it never happened. And they use a natural psychology of pregnancy. Okay. Part of the psychology of pregnancy is it takes a while to really sink in that this is real. Something that's huge like that. And I'm sure you've seen that in your own life. When you get really big news, it takes a while to digest it. It takes a while to process it and grasp, yes, this is really happening. Okay. That's one of the things, when you're told someone you love dies, often this isn't happening, this isn't happening, this isn't happening. Well, the woman goes into the abortion clinic and they tell her, you can make it like it never happened. You just do this procedure and it'll be like it never happened. And so she's in fight or flight mode, and she hasn't really internalized yet that this is real. And she's been told that she can do something that will make it go away, make it like it never happened. And the one thing Panic and wanting to bail out of this situation, they have known for close to 100 years now, is normal in early pregnancy. This panic, this I can't cope with this there's no way I can deal. And typically, once the mother has a chance to bond with the baby, once the baby becomes real to her, she changes her mind. And it used to be this happened at quickening when she felt the baby move, and she'd be like, wow, there really is a baby inside me. And then abortion is completely off the table. Why do you think abortion clinics don't want to show the woman the ultrasound? 80% of women who go to a pro-life center hear the heartbeat, see the ultrasound, reject abortion out of hand. That's my baby. I'm going to protect my baby. I'm going to love my baby. There's no way I can do that. Instead, they go someplace where they're told it's a blob of tissue. There's no heartbeat. We've got on video Planned Parenthood telling women there's no arms, no legs, no heart, no brain. There's nothing but, they use that unformed glob of tissue lie. So when you're in a state where your brain is going, get me out of this, 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 and somebody comes and they have all the patina of authority and they're saying, we can get you out of this, we can make it like none of this ever happened. Now you might say, oh, well, that's no excuse. Again, you have to understand that a lot of this is hardwired into the brain. There's this fight or flight thing. And the degree to which you could overcome rationality is staggering. There was a plane that crashed. Perfectly good plane, nothing wrong with it. Highly trained and experienced crew. After it crashed and killed everybody on board, the NTSB listened to the cockpit voice recorder and found out that the pilot, the flight engineer, and the co-pilot were all so busy fretting over a light bulb that they didn't even notice nobody was flying the plane. That's what neurology can do, to where, how can somebody not notice that nobody's flying a plane? Nobody noticed that nobody was flying the plane. These abortion people know how to leverage fear. They know how to leverage that fight or flight response, and they know how to leverage the fact that the pregnancy, the baby, doesn't seem real to the woman, and they know how to leverage her love for the other people in her life and use that to sell her something she does not want. And I'm not saying that there aren't cold, callous women. And Rosa Nappersteck Taft in Chicago back in the mid-1970s. If anybody deserved Ming Cow Ha as an abortionist, it was Rosa Nappersteck Taft. She and her friends had a party the night before her abortion to celebrate that she was the first among them to get to try the great new safe and legal variety. And it left her in the ICU. It left her messed up for life. Surgery after surgery, she had to learn to walk all over again. There's somebody who was kind of asking for it. She went into this, all right, yes, my legal abortion, woohoo! That's not typical. Those women are at the most desperate in their lives. They are looking for somebody to get them out of this. But they've been convinced it's the only responsible thing that they can do. And that's something where we have to start holding these politicians' feet to the fire. We need to start holding these groups' feet to the fire. And we need for women going into these abortion clinics to have the same consumer protection that everybody else has, and not be selling to them using psychology, neurology, and just every trick in the book, including their love for their children, their parents, to convince them to do something that they would never otherwise do.